Welcome, and thank you for joining us this evening for the proposed GridLiance West Core Upgrades Transmission Line Project Public Scoping Meeting. My name is Ellen Hopp, and I will serve as your moderator for this meeting. I'm with Galileo Project, who is supporting the BLM as a meeting coordinator and facilitator. We'll get started in just a few moments. Please note the meeting attendees are muted and video feeds are turned off. This meeting will be recorded and transcribed. If you do not want to participate in a recorded meeting, this would be the time to leave the meeting. While we wait for others to join, please take a moment to familiarize yourself with the controls at the bottom of your screen. If you're having audio difficulties during the meeting, you can use your phone for audio and your computer to view the screen. If you do this, remember to turn off or mute your computer audio to avoid electronic feedback. If you're having trouble with your internet connection, please consider dialing in by phone. Dial-in information is located in your registration confirmation email. This meeting will include opportunities for question and answers about the National Environmental Policy Act process, Environmental Impact Statement, and Resource Management Plan Amendment. Questions will be received using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. This meeting will also include opportunities to provide a verbal comment. We will begin with those participants who indicated when registering for the meeting that they would like to make a comment. For all others who would like to make a comment, we will ask you to raise your hand. However, please wait until I give you the signal to do so. For those joining by phone, pressing *9 allows you to raise and lower your hand. Pressing *6 will mute and unmute your mic. I ask that everyone keeps themselves muted until you're asked to unmute. Next slide, please. The agenda for today's meeting will include an introduction from Nicholas Pay, the BLM Pahrump Field Office Manager, a presentation about the project, a question and answer session, a public comment period, and closing remarks. Next slide, please. The presenters joining us for today's meeting include Nicholas Pay, the BLM Pahrump Field Office Manager, Mary Ann Vinson, BLM Realty Specialist, and myself, Ellen Hopp, with Galileo Project serving as the meeting facilitator. Also joining today's meeting are the BLM resource specialists displayed on the screen to help answer resource-specific questions behind the scene. Additionally, there are other BLM resource specialists who are not in attendance at today's meeting, but are assisting in the National Environmental Policy Act process and developing the Environmental Impact Statement and Resource Management Plan Amendment. Now, Nicholas Pay, the BLM Pahrump Field Office Manager, will provide an introduction. Nicholas?
Thank you, Ellen. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the public scoping meeting for the proposed GridLiance West Core Upgrades Transmission Line Project. My name is Nicholas Pay, and I am the field manager for the BLM's Pahrump Field Office. I want to thank each of you for joining us this evening to hear more about the proposed project and to provide your comments and input. The proposed project is located in Nye and Clark County, Nevada. The BLM has initiated the environmental review required by the National Environmental Policy Act. This initiated a scoping period that will be open until September 14th, 2023. This virtual scoping meeting is one of the first opportunities that individuals and agencies have to provide input on this proposed project. The overall goal is to define the scope of the issues to be addressed in depth in the analysis that will be included in the EIS. As you consider your comments, I would like to provide some information on what's most beneficial for us in the process. First of all, please remember that commenting is not a form of voting on an alternative. Numerous comments that repeat the same basic message of support or opposition will typically be addressed collectively. As a general rule, please be polite and respectful. We recognize that some of you may not like or want this project. Those reviewing these comments are public servants tasked with a job, and they deserve the same respect and professional treatment that you would expect. As you provide your comments, please keep in mind that the most helpful comments are clear, concise, and relevant to the analysis of the proposed action. Comments should be focused on identifying clear issues that may arise should this project be authorized and provide specific examples of solutions that could lead to effective ways to eliminate, minimize, or mitigate the issue. We are still in the early stages of the National Environmental Policy Act process, so we may not have all of the answers to your specific questions. The primary purpose of this scoping meeting is to ensure that we have a good handle on the issues that need to be analyzed during the process. Thank you again for joining us this evening. I would like to now pass the presentation over to Mary Ann Vincent, BLM Realty Specialist for the project.
Good evening. The BLM's purpose is to respond to the right-of-way application submitted by GridLiance West LLC to amend portions of the existing BLM right-of-way grants to construct, operate, maintain, and decommission approximately 155 miles of alternating current overhead transmission lines. The BLM will evaluate the right-of-way application submitted by GridLiance West LLC in compliance with the Federal Land Policy and Management Act, the BLM's right-of-way regulations, and other applicable federal laws and policies. The BLM's purpose and need for the project will be used to formulate a reasonable range of alternatives to be considered and analyzed during the National Environmental Policy Act analysis process. The BLM will evaluate these alternatives through an environmental impact statement. Additionally, the BLM's purpose and need for the Resource Management Plan amendment is to bring the project into compliance and consistency with the 1998 Las Vegas Field Office Resource Management Plan as it pertains to elements of the project for which there is no other option to attain compliance. Next slide, please. The map depicts key elements of the proposed project and its layout, including the transmission line and substations. The proposed route is depicted in bold orange, green, and blue lines. The orange line represents the 275-foot right-of-way. The green line represents the 150 or 275-foot right-of-way, and the blue line represents the 150-foot right-of-way. There are 7 existing substations and 1 proposed substation along the proposed route. The project area includes approximately 4,900 acres of lands administered by the BLM, Bureau of Indian Affairs, Department of Defense, State of Nevada, as well as private lands in Clark and Nye counties, Nevada. Next slide, please. The proposed upgrade consists of 4 segments with double circuit 230 kilovolt or 500 kilovolt options being considered for each segment, unless otherwise noted. Segment 1, Sloan Canyon Switchyard to Trout Canyon Switchyard, includes upgrades and expansions at both switchyards. The Trout Canyon Switchyard upgrades are located on BLM administered lands, and this segment would be upgraded to a double circuit 500 kilovolt transmission line, regardless of the voltage option chosen for the remainder of the system. Segment 2, Trout Canyon Switchyard to Pahrump Substation, includes upgrades and expansions at the Gamebird Substation and at Pahrump Substation, which both occur on private lands. Segment 3, Pahrump Substation to Innovation Substation, includes upgrades at the Innovation Substation. The transmission line upgrades between the Pahrump Substation and the proposed Johnny Corner Substation would be constructed at either 230 kilovolt or 500 kilovolt. The Johnny Corner Substation would only be constructed under the 500 kilovolt option. The portion from the proposed Johnny Corner Substation to the Innovation Substation would consist of a double circuit 230 kilovolt transmission line under both options. Segment 4, Innovation Substation to Northwest Substation, includes upgrades at the Desert View Substation. This segment would be upgraded to a double circuit 230 kilovolt transmission line under both options. The final voltage configuration of the transmission line requested by GridLiance would be determined based on California Independent System Operator-led studies and will be finalized before the record of decision. For segments where both 230 kilovolt and 500 kilovolt options are being considered, GridLiance is currently advancing design efforts for both options. The 500 kilovolt components generally require a 275-foot wide right-of-way, whereas the 230 kilovolt components generally require a 150-foot right-of-way. GridLiance West LLC anticipates an 18 to 24-month construction timeframe. California Independent System Operators' goal is for the operations to begin by the end of 2025. Next slide, please. The National Environmental Policy Act of 1969 requires the lead federal agency, BLM, to evaluate effects of the proposed project on the natural and human environment. The environmental impact statement will include a detailed analysis of potential environmental impacts from which decision makers can make an informed decision. With the publication of the Notice of Intent to prepare environmental impact statement in the Federal Register, the notice announces an environmental impact statement and resource management plan amendment will be prepared and initiates the public scoping process for identifying issues and potential alternatives for consideration in the environmental impact statement. Through scoping, the public has an opportunity to help agencies identify relevant issues associated with the project and develop potential alternatives to be analyzed in the environmental impact statement. The next public involvement milestone will include the draft environmental impact statement and resource management plan amendment comment period, which includes a 90-day public review and comment period, and several public information meetings. After receiving and responding to public comments, the BLM will continue to revise the analysis in preparation for a final environmental impact statement and proposed resource management plan amendment. The final environmental impact statement and proposed resource management plan amendment comment period will include a 30-day public availability and protest period and a 60-day governor's consistency review period. Finally, the BLM will publish a record of decision to approve with modifications, or deny the application. Next slide, please. The National Environmental Policy Act of 1969 establishes the process for carrying out an evaluation of a project. An environmental impact statement is prepared to analyze and disclose effects of a proposed action on the natural and human environment, and to consider reasonable alternatives and mitigation measures. The environmental impact statement will inform the BLM's decision on whether to approve with modifications, or deny GridLiance West LLC's application to build the GridLiance West Core Upgrades transmission line project. This decision will be documented at the end of the analysis process in a record of decision. The environmental impact statement analysis process includes steps to ensure coordination and collaboration between agencies and to provide the interested public with opportunities to provide input, identify issues, and offer solutions early in the National Environmental Policy Act process. The scoping period, which we are in now, is the first formal opportunity to gather that input. Information and perspectives shared during scoping will inform the analysis, alternatives development, and mitigation measures considered in the environmental impact statement. Next slide, please. The BLM must analyze the full range of effects to the proposed project and reasonable alternatives. An impact or effect is a change or consequence that results from an activity which can be positive, negative, or both. An environmental impact statement describes effects and ways to mitigate effects. To mitigate means to lessen or remove negative effects. Displayed on the slide is the initial list of resources identified by the BLM to be analyzed in the environmental impact statement. Next slide, please. Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act requires federal agencies to consider the effects of their undertakings on historic properties that are included or may be eligible for inclusion on the National Register of Historic Places. The BLM is using the environmental review process to meet its compliance requirements for Section 106. At this time, the BLM is seeking your input to help identify historic properties that may be affected by the proposed project. This information will assist the BLM in identifying and evaluating impacts and effects to cultural resources. You may provide written comments regarding cultural resources and historic properties as part of the National Environmental Policy Act scoping comment process. If you have specific information about historic properties or have questions about the 106 process, you can also contact Tiffany Arun using the contact information provided on the screen. Next slide, please. We hope you will consider participating in this scoping effort for the GridLiance West Core Upgrades Transmission Line project. All interested parties and agencies are invited to submit written comments before the end of the scoping period. You can do so in 3 ways. Online at the BLM's National Environmental Policy Act Register website by clicking the Participate Now button to the left of the document link, by sending an email or mailing your comment to the contact information provided on the screen. Your comments are most helpful if they address one or more of the following: resources likely to be affected by the project, potential resource issues that should be analyzed, data sources that the agency may not be aware of, and/or reasonable alternatives to be considered in the analysis. Next slide, please. Thank you for your attention. Further information about the project and public scoping meetings can be found on the BLM's project website displayed on the screen. If you have specific questions and would like to speak with someone about the project, please contact myself, Mary Ann Benson, Realty Specialist, by phone or email using the contact information on the slide. To stay informed about the project, you may sign up for the project mailing list by providing your contact information using the form displayed on the screen. If you are unable to access or complete the form, you may provide your contact information by email to myself, Mary Ann Benson, using the contact information on the screen. Thank you. Have a good evening. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Mary Ann. We will now transition into the question and answer portion of the meeting. Galileo will serve as the facilitator of the question and answer period. As a reminder, we ask all those joining by computer to please type your questions into the Q&A dialog box on your Zoom screen. If you would like to provide a verbal comment, please wait until we close the question and answer segment. We'll let you know when we begin the segment of that meeting. All right, as we're waiting for questions to come through, just a couple reminders. This is still the scoping period, so information is still being gathered. If you want to, after this meeting, and still have more questions, you can visit the BLM's e-planning site for this project to find more information. Let's see, we've got our first question now. Nick, can you confirm or refute that the 1998 Las Vegas management plan is currently being revised?
Yeah, the 1998 Las Vegas Resource Management Plan is not currently being revised. The Nevada State Office is proposing to update resource management plans to throughout Nevada via BLM's Nevada Resource Management Plan Modernization Project and Environmental Impact Statement. There's no timeline yet on this proposed for this project.
Thank you. While we're waiting for questions, just a reminder that the scoping period does close on September 14th. You should have your written comments in by 11:59 p.m. Pacific time. You can also sign up for the project mailing list by providing your contact information using the information found at the end of the slide presentation. You'll see that contact information on the end, or you can visit the BLM's e-planning website. Okay, Nick, we have our next question. Upgrade, in quotes, implies that there is an existing transmission line that is being upgraded. True or not? Or is this an entirely new transmission line?
Yeah, this project is an upgrade of an existing overhead transmission system that is currently comprised of a single circuit 230 kilovolt transmission line system and 7 substations.
Thank you. Collecting questions now. Thank you for your patience. The BLM National Environmental Policy Act Register includes an interactive web map, various documents, and the project timeline, which will be updated periodically. This is a great resource for you to visit to review throughout the process. Nick, we have our next question. It seems like a giant circle that starts near Las Vegas and ends up in Vegas. May we assume that this is intended to accommodate all the solar that has been developed in Southern Nevada? Will this project result in accommodate even more solar development adjacent to the transmission line?
Yeah, the CAISO transmission plans from 2022 and 2023 noted that the project would, in part, provide opportunities to meet the renewable energy portfolio standards by connecting potential renewable energy development in Southern Nevada.
Thank you. I know we have a few people that have joined by phone. If you have a question, you can press *9 to raise and lower your hand. And that way we can unmute so that you can ask your question. But if you have a comment, please refrain from comments until we get to that portion of the meeting. Nick, I have a question again now. This one is about the plan amendment. Is the plan amendment to downgrade the VRM class?
The BLM anticipates a resource management plan amendment to address project conformance with some of the project area that are designated as VRM or Visual Resource Management Class 2 and Class 3. BLM is considering amending the classification in these areas to Class 4. BLM will analyze the proposed resource management plan amendment in the same environmental impact statement as the project itself.
We have a question about the line itself. Is GridLiance line owned by NextEra Energy?
NextEra is the parent company of GridLiance.
Just a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. You will be able to access this meeting at the BLM's e-planning site or the BLM Nevada State Office YouTube page. This meeting is scheduled to run until 8 p.m. tonight. However, if you end up having comments or questions after today's presentation, you may submit them through the BLM's e-planning site for this project through the email that will be shown on the last slide or in writing to the BLM Southern Nevada District Office. Thank you for your continued patience as we wait while these questions are coming in. I see that we have a hand raised. If you're raising your hand to make a comment, please wait until we get to the question and answer portion. Or, I'm sorry, till we get to the public comment portion of this meeting. If you have a question, please type it into the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. Okay, we have another question. Will the question I posed when I signed up online be addressed after all the live questions have been answered? I asked how much energy, clean energy, would be on the line in each proposed configuration.
Yeah, we don't have specific information on what proportion of renewable energy projects could connect for each voltage option.
Okay, and our next question is, since this is an existing transmission line, isn't there already an access road? And if so, why must 150 or 300 new feet of impact be required depending on this project?
Yeah, where existing access roads do not provide access to structure locations or work areas, new roads would be constructed. The number of new access roads would be kept to a minimum and consistent with their intended use.
Thank you. And thank you all for your patience. We've got quite a few questions coming in and it's just taking us a little bit of time to get organized, but we will get all these questions answered. Nick, we have a question about capacity. How much capacity is on the existing 230 kV line and how much will be added in the upgrade?
Yeah, the BLM doesn't have an answer for how much capacity remains on the existing single circuit 230 kV line. However, the new utility line will consist of a double circuit, at least 230 kV line. There will be also other upgrades of potential 500 kV. So depends on what they end up being and the information provided.
Thank you, Nick. Just a reminder, as we mentioned earlier, this is the scoping phase of the project, so all of these questions are very helpful. This is when all of the information is being gathered, so please continue to put those questions in the question and answer box on your Zoom screen. We have another question for you, Nick. Would the project facilitate clean energy projects? What proportion would that represent for both voltage alternatives?
Thank you, Ellen. This question came in during registration, and we want to make sure that the attendee heard the answer. CAISO transmission plans from 2022 and 2023 noted that the project would in part provide opportunities to meet renewable energy portfolio standards by connecting renewable energy project developments in Southern Nevada. We do not have a specific information on what proportion of renewable energy projects would connect for each project voltage option.
Thank you. The next question is about utility corridors. In California, BLM has designated utility corridors. Does Nevada have a similar approach, i.e. designated utility corridors? And if so, how does this project relate to the corridors?
Yeah, the BLM Nevada also has designated transmission corridors, both resource management plan designated and west-wide energy corridors. The existing transmission line and the proposed alignment for construction are located in those corridors where able, but there are portions where there may not be a corridor within range to locate within.
Thank you. Again, just a reminder that the BLM National Environmental Policy Act Register includes an interactive web map, various documents, and the project timeline, and that will be updated periodically. So some of this additional information that's being collected, you'll be able to find more details there when it's available. Nick, we have a question about substations. How can I obtain a list of all the substations which are being upgraded and their locations?
Yep, information about the substations being upgraded and their locations can be found in the plans of development for each project segment, which are available on the BLM's National NEPA register.
Nick, we have a question about the Energy Act. Is the 2025 deadline to meet, is the 2025 deadline there to meet the deadline of the Energy Act, which requires 25 gigawatt of renewable energy on public lands by 2025?
The 2025 deadline was determined by the California Independent System Operator.
Thank you again for your patience while we get these questions organized and get those answers for you. Nick, the next question is, what or who will determine or decide the kilovolts, 230 versus 500?
Yeah, the California Independent System Operator will determine the final voltage following their study.
Got just a few more questions. Following this question and answer period, we will open it up for public input, and I'll have some instructions on that before we begin. Nick, we have another question. The Reno BLM said the timeline for the Nevada-wide RMP would be 2 to 4 years, and they have begun the initial process. Does that not seem like a reasonable amount of time to wait for this project review to move forward?
Yeah, the BLM has a need to respond to the right-of-way application submitted by GridLiance West LLC outside of that statewide RMP process.
We've got just a few more questions coming in. Please be patient and we'll get those questions asked and answered, and then we'll be moving into the public input period. Okay, we have a question about tortoises. Assuming there are tortoises and there is a may affect determination, will BLM consult with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, resulting in a project-specific biological opinion, or is there an existing opinion, i.e. for the Las Vegas RMP, that would authorize take of the tortoises?
Yeah, there was a total of 38 live desert tortoises found during the surveys for this project. Project level analysis and biological assessment will be required for the Mojave Desert tortoise, and mitigations would be specified in the biological assessment. There are a number of applicant committed design features available in the plan of development. That biological assessment will be used by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to issue a biological opinion specific to this project. Neither the Southern Nevada Programmatic Biological Opinion nor the Las Vegas RMP would be used to authorize take for this project.
Thank you, Nick. We've got a few more questions and then we'll move into public input. But just as a reminder, if you have more questions after this portion ends, you can continue to put them in the screen using the Q&A function, or you can submit them to the BLM through the e-planning site for this project. But we will remain here. The BLM will remain here until 8 p.m. tonight. We want to make sure everyone gets their questions answered. Nick, we have a question about the upgrade. Will the transmission line upgrade increase the available electricity for the rural towns in South Clark County, such as Good Springs and Sandy Valley?
Benefits to the rural towns in South Clark County would include additional transmission grid reliability and economic development opportunities.
Just as a reminder, this is the question and answer portion of the meeting. Please ensure that your question and answers are submitted as a question. If it is a comment, please save that for the public input period. Okay, our next question, Nick, is have the effects on communities like Beatty, wedged between two transmission lines, been considered? If so, what measures are considered?
Yeah, effects to those local communities will be addressed in the environmental impact statement that would include mitigation measures to reduce such impacts.
Thank you. Okay, we are at about 5 minutes to 7. We will be moving into the comment period around 7. We're going to continue answering the questions in the Q&A. So you can continue to put your questions in there, but we are going to move into the public input period shortly. Okay, we have a question about right-of-way width. What is the width of the right-of-way needed to facilitate this upgrade? 150 feet per 230 kilovolt, parentheses 300, or 275 per 500 kilovolt, parentheses 550 per circuit.
Yeah, the right of way is determined by the voltage and the structure height. For a 230 kilovolt, 150 feet wide is the minimum required width, and 275 feet wide is the minimum required for the 550 kV transmission line.
Okay, we're just a few minutes before 7. We will be transitioning into the public input period shortly. We have one more question we're going to work on, and then we'll make that transition. This is the question about where the power would go. It says none of the power would go to Clark County, just Cal-ISO.
At this point, we don't have an answer to this question. We'll work with the applicant and get an answer.
Okay, let's move on to the public comment section. Next slide, if you would. Thank you, everyone, for your thoughtful questions and to the BLM team for their responses. We'll now begin the comment session, and as a reminder, we will begin with those participants who indicated when registering for the meeting that they would like to make a comment. For those who did not register to make a comment, you may do so now. For those joining by computer, please select the raise hand feature when it is your turn to speak, and the meeting facilitator will ask you to unmute your microphone. If you are joining by phone, press *9 to raise your hand and select *6 to unmute. When it is your turn, I will accept your request to unmute. When providing your comment, first provide your first full and sorry about that. Please provide your full first and last name. Each speaker will be given 2 minutes to make their comment, and a timer will be displayed on the screen. Your input will be included in the project record. Next slide, please. As we transition into the public input period, please keep in mind that BLM wants to hear from all members of the public. Out of respect for everyone's participation, we'll be using the following guidelines. Stay within your allotted time to allow everyone the opportunity to speak. Please be respectful of others and refrain from profanity. If these guidelines are not followed, we may mute your microphone and move on to the next person. Your participation is an important part of the decision-making process. The most effective comments are those that provide useful information to the agencies. Keep your comments focused on the proposed project and what is being analyzed. Think about concerns you have about the impacts to the project about impacts the project may have and explain them in detail. Comments should focus on identifying potentially affected resources, potential resource issues that should be analyzed, and data sources that the agency may not be aware of. Avoid comments that simply state, "I'm in favor of this project," or "I'm opposed to this project." Remember that the more clear, concise, and relevant to the project your comments are, the more effective and useful they will be at improving the environmental impact statement, resource management plan amendment, and informing the BLM's decision. The first commenter today is Amy Nelson. Amy, please select the raise hand feature and follow the prompt on your screen to unmute your microphone. Please remember to state your full name for the record before beginning your comment. The 2-minute timer will begin after stating your name. Do we have Amy? I'm not seeing her. Okay. We will move on to the next person on the list. That's Kevin Emmerich. Kevin, please state your full first and last name, and your timer will begin after you state your name.
Hi, this is Kevin Emmerich, spelled Emmerich. I'm with an organization called Basin and Range Watch. I was here last night on a phone. I want to make some more comments, specifically on cumulative impacts in regional areas or connected actions. The line will go through the Indian Springs Mercury Valley, and that area also is seeing application for the GreenLink West project. Associated with GridLiance are 4 big solar applications. One, Bonanza, is moving in the NEPA process, and 2 of the other 3 look like they could move. One called which is about to get a medium priority designation by BLM. This is of concern to the desert tortoise because in that area, number one, it was designated by Fish and Wildlife Service as the most critical desert tortoise connectivity corridor in southern Nevada. Number 2, the population is hit hard by drought. And so when we put all these power poles up there and then we bulldoze all this habitat for solar panels, number 1, the power poles are going to create a lot of perches for subsidized predators. And I fear this is going to eliminate what's left of that population. Our organization nominated an area of critical environmental concern with the plan amendment for Bonanza Solar. And since you're all doing a plan amendment for this, we would like to see this draft EIS for this GridLiance upgrade consider the area of critical environmental concern proposal as a conservation alternative to this project. I have another comment. I guess I'll just register again, but I do want to. I'll just get on again. I don't have any time left, so thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Do we have anyone else that would like to make a comment? To notify us, you can just raise your hand and we'll call on you. And again, as a reminder, if you have questions, you can continue to put those in the question and answer box at the bottom of the screen while we're waiting for comments. Okay, Kevin, looks like you're up again.
Hello again, Kevin Emmerich. A couple more things and I'll be finished. Number one, last night you said you received an application for an upgrade of this line going from the Johnny area to Beatty. I hope you'll share that with us. We'd like to see maps of that because that's going to also create a cumulative scenario up in the Amargosa Valley. NV Energy is probably going to build a solar project associated with the GridLiance substation there, but they auctioned off solar applications in Amargosa for 2 more gigawatts. And I think this GridLiance actually explains that missing link there. I wanted to mention the Pahrump Valley. NextEra also is building the Yellow Pine project. And from what we understand, they need this upgrade to complete the last phase. And then, of course, there's 4 other solar applications in that area. So there's a really big cumulative impact associated. And I don't think any of those can go forward without this upgrade. Yellow Pine was kind of a disaster. You guys know that. I mean, they had that initial desert tortoise die off when they moved them during a drought. But we understand that this year alone, they found like 22 more desert tortoises on the site that were actually missed in the surveys. And then the rains last winter created a massive invasive weed outbreak on Yellow Pine solar. And so apparently they're developing a plan to possibly eliminate those weeds with herbicide. I'm just saying that if you keep building these projects, you're going to have water issues, biology issues. I mean, it's going on and on. So these EIS documents should not be a separate review. We should put all of this together and look at a bigger picture because it's really having a negative impact on the Mojave Desert and the communities here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Emmerich. Do we have any others who would like to comment? We'll wait a few moments just in case. If you are calling in by phone, you can raise your hand by dialing *6. Thank you to all who provided comments during today's meeting. If you still wish to provide a comment and your name was not called, we encourage everyone interested to submit written comments. You may submit your written comments after this meeting in 3 ways. Electronically via the BLM National Environmental Policy Act register displayed on the screen. Click on the Participate Now button at the right of the document link. Enter your comment information, then click Submit. By sending an email or sending a written comment to the contact information displayed on the screen. Again, the deadline for submitting written comments is September 14th, 2023 at 11:59 p.m. Pacific Time. After the comment period closes, the BLM will review all comments. Nick, would you like to add some closing remarks?
Yes, thank you. First of all, thanks to everyone who provided questions and comments. You've given us a lot to consider as we move forward, and we hope you continue to engage in this process. We look forward to continuing to work closely with all of you. And as we mentioned earlier, we're still in the early stages and are thankful to have everyone's input. Please feel free to share this information presented in today's meeting. This meeting was recorded, so you can go back and watch the recording and provide any additional comments. The comment period will be open until September 14th, 2023, and the BLM will publish a scoping report that will summarize all of the comments received during the scoping process. Thank you again for your input, and we look forward to seeing you in the future.
Just as a reminder, this concludes the meeting. However, the BLM will stay online until 8 p.m. Please use the Q&A function to submit any additional questions.